Hello, hello.
Hi.
Hey guys, so yes, thank you for joining this session. I guess some number 5 or 6 of the Lunch and Learn session by the French Tech Indonesia, which has been recently officially labeled by the French government. So we are very glad to see you more and more. Around different nice topic. And today we are glad to welcome as a speaker Anne Caron, which I gotta present. Actually, I should have presented myself first, right? But I'm Jérôme, and I'm one of the board member of the French Tech Indonesia, also the CEO of IPs, which is a recruitment company dedicated for hyper growth company in Southeast Asia. So Anne, just to give some brief introduction of Anne. Anne is a people strategy expert, and she comes with 20 years experience in the HR and organizational design space, 10 of which with Google, where she held several leadership roles in Europe and Asia. So Anne now she's supporting startups, founders, and HR teams in building the foundation of positive and performing organizations. That scale, right? So she has worked with hundreds of founders, which I know few of them, and she has developed a methodology to optimize team developments and organizational health, which she describes in her book, because Anne is an author also, and she wrote a fabulous book that you can find easily, called From Zero to 1000: The Organizational Playbook for Startups. Anne is also the co-founder and co-president of the French Tech Indonesia. And I think that's quite a fair bit already, right? So with no further ado, I just give Anne the floor. Thank you, Anne, for sharing.
Thank you for the lovely presentation, Jérôme. Jérôme. Let's go. Let's go this way. All right. Well, thank you very much for everyone. So today we're gonna be doing, I will be sharing a rather high-level introduction about people strategy for startups. Starting more specifically with, what is the reality of growing a startup? What happens exactly? And so there is a common idea that to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to have a great idea. But the reality is that the great idea is merely enough. We all know that the majority of the startups fail. And when we have a look at the reasons why these startups fail, we actually can attribute the reasons of this failure to human or leadership mistakes. Because at the end of the day, the quality of your strategies are only as good as the people developing the strategies. The execution of those strategies is only as good as the people on the ground actually working and doing the job. And the quality of these people doing the job on the ground is only as good as the people already in the team who are hiring and training and managing them. So what do I mean that most of these startups fail due to human or leadership error? Well, if we look at startups that, for instance, ran out of cash, basically that's a human error. That was a financial strategy that was not well carried through. Right? Whether that was a pricing issue, then that's the strategy that was not right. The no market need is because the go-to-market strategy was not right. And who makes those strategy? People. So basically, behind every success, you will find people. People will make or break your company. And in order to be successful, you need to have great people, talented people at every level of your organization. You need to have the right people in the right roles at the right time. To make it simple, in order to be successful and to scale, a startup needs four things. First, a product, right? They need a product or a service that people are willing to buy. They also need to be able to generate revenues and to be able to find a path to making enough money and scalability. They need to have enough capital to get started and to make the initial investments. And they need people to execute the plan. But the reality is that most founders that I speak to, that I work with, and that I see on a daily basis, focus only on the first three. And do very little, if any at all, thinking or doing about the organization and the people. And this is what happens when you don't anticipate and plan about the strategy. As a result, the people strategy. As a result, as you grow, your organization starts to lag behind your business needs. What it means is that as you grow, your business requires more than what people in the team can actually do. And that's actually okay, reasonably okay, from the moment that your startup is growing at a reasonable scale, which is very much at the early stage, right? Of course, you have more to do than the number of people in the team, but you easily multitask, multi-hat the individuals in the initial team. For instance, you want to increase your social media presence. Well, it will be the sales guy that will take this hat and try to do some posts online. Worst case scenario, you take an intern that will help a little bit with that. But the difficulty happens from the moment you hit hypergrowth. And that usually happens between Series A and Series B. That's when you get significant funding that requires you, that is allocated to scaling. And so all of a sudden, the focus is to accelerate, to add new location, to add new products. And therefore, you need more teams, you need more things to do. And therefore, it's not just a little bit of help from an intern in social media. You need a full marketing team to be able to deliver what the business needs in order to deliver that new plan. And this is basically what happens. All of a sudden, you need to hire a lot of people very fast. So you need to build recruiting capabilities because people do not get hired just like that. You need to be able to build a brand so that people come to you as well and they're interested in joining your organization. You need to scale your HR because it's not going to be scalable for the CEO anymore to be handling all the contracts, all the leaves, all the salaries, etc. And as you add all those people, you also need to add people management layers, right? You need to have people management capabilities. And that is all, redesigning, rethinking the organization structure, and even questioning about the role of the co-founders. Are they still the ones that should be at the top of the organization for this or that department? And so as everything happens, this is most typically the reaction of the founder. Too hard, too much happening at the same time, really confusing. So let's start from the beginning. When you get into an entrepreneur journey, it's a long, long race. It's a difficult race with a number of different events. And you need to get ready. No one gets into a marathon without preparing, without studying the path ahead. An entrepreneurial journey is made of up and downs, probably more downs than up. A lot of these downs are not predictable, but there's a lot that can be predictable that we know about and that we can prepare for in advance. And so this is what I will share with you about. What are the things that you as a founder, as a leader needs to know about as you get yourself into a leadership an entrepreneurship journey. The first thing is that the nature of your company will constantly change as your company grows, and the needs of the organization will change as well. Basically, a company is very similar to a kid. Managing a company of 10 people is not the same as managing a company of 50, 100, or 500 people. The same way that parenting a baby is not the same as parenting a kid who's 8 years old or 16 years old. So as a founder, your startup is your baby. You want the best for it. You're extremely invested in this. You will get the same frustration as a founder that you would have as a parent, and hopefully the same pride as well. So there are 5 stages of growth for a startup. The first one is between 0 and 30 employees, which I call the age of innocence. So this first stage, although it is indeed quite disrupting, like having a baby, it's disrupting, there's a lot that you have to figure out. But at the end of the day, it will always be remembered as the good old days. In a startup that is as small as 0 to 30 employees, things work rather organically. Everybody knows each other. Everybody is involved in the key decisions for the business. Everybody is clear in terms of the priorities. Everybody has access to the founders and are going to them to ask questions if they have. There's a high level of excitement, of motivation. People have a lot of opportunities. There's a high level of trust. You name it, a lot of quite positive. When you move to childhood, it starts to be a little bit more challenging. Basically the same. When you have a child, it's a bit more complicated. They start doing a lot of new things that you cannot necessarily control. So between 30 and 75 people, you actually start adding a lot of people much faster. And there's some distance that starts to be created between the senior management and the employees. And that starts to create also some confusion. People are not necessarily clear about what are the priorities. They are not necessarily clear which team they belong to. I see that very often. They're not, the early team feels that they miss the good old days when they were very close to the founder, and now they have multiple layers between them and the layer. And so all in all, basically, what used to work well before in a very organic way is now creating more chaos. And when you get into pre-adolescent age, that's when really the trouble starts to arrive. I'm the mother of a teenage, and I know what I'm speaking about. At this age, if you have not done and built the right foundation at this stage, you're going to struggle here, because you're not in control anymore. What you need to do is to have systems that ensure that everything is happening without being able to be there yourself. And so that's why it's important. I'm not speaking about the other stages because they're quite far away, but it is important to plan ahead to ensure that we're building here what will be needed here, and we'll be building for the teenagehood early stage as well. So that's about the nature of your company that will change and evolve, and the needs that the organization will need at each level will be different. But your role as a founder will change too as you go through those different stages. The first thing as a founder is that you don't know what you don't know. And I'm going to go back to the comparison with being a parent. Even for serial entrepreneurs, it's always something new. You may have had a kid before, but every kid is different. So every company is different as well. And we don't know what we don't know. When we join, we start, on top of that, we have to do everything, and it's challenging. So We need to, as founders, to realize that we are going to have a lot of learnings on the way and be ready for that. And because there's a lot that we'll need to know, it will require us to evolve and to acquire new skills. It's also important to make peace with who we are as individuals and be going with this. It's too late to become the leader that you would like to be. And when you look like at a great, well-known examples, these are not you. You need to be you. So make peace with that, embrace who you are and be the leader you are and grow into that. To be successful as a founder and specifically the CEO, you need to be able to move fast. A lot of the new skills that you will need to acquire are not skills that you learn overnight or on a YouTube video. These are skills that get developed over time. There's people skills and organizational skills, and those are not fast to do. So you need to plan in advance again. The three roles that you will have to go through as a founders are these. The first one is somehow the easiest and the ones that most founder, especially when they're rather young, cherish the most, is the jack of all trades. So basically you are doing everything. You have 15 different hats on your head. So you are the sales guy, the admin guy, the marketing guy, the HR guy. You're doing it all. Okay, so it's stressful and challenging for sure. And as I said, you don't know it all. You may not know how to do marketing or how to do contracts, but you'll have to do it. This being said, there's a high level of satisfaction that comes from that, because this is your baby, you're in control, and you are making all the decisions. And this is highly satisfying, which makes it complicated to move to the next level, because the skills that will be required at the next level are totally different. And there will be a lot of frustration. The next role is to be a manager. So basically you start to have a team of 3 to 10 people reporting to you. And so at that point, you need to make sure that you're making time to be with them. Because if they don't have your direction as a manager, they're not going to be doing a good job. They're not going to be doing the job that you hired them to do in the first place. So there's a transition that needs to happen here, which is delegating and letting go of the control. Ideally, you would hire people who are better than you at doing the things that you hire them for. And you need to be able to let them do their own mistakes, although you actually see them before them, and that you really worry for your baby, for your startup. So that transition is extremely difficult, and it is important to do that properly. Otherwise, you end up having a small team that cannot work without you, and you become the bottleneck of the organization. And that is even more true as your company grows and you need to take on a leadership role, because as a leader, then you're at the top, you're giving the whole direction, but you're not calling the shots on the operation side. And again, that's extremely, extremely frustrating, because what is perhaps a little bit challenging with the jack of all trades is also very satisfying, because you get things done. And when you move up, you're not getting things done. You're leading people and helping them understand why they're here and why it matters, and what they do gets an impact at the bigger scale. So these, again, are things that you can anticipate for and plan for. It's important to do it so in order to make sure that you're going to be having a healthy growth. Now, as I said, the journey shouldn't be improvised. There's a lot that cannot be planned, but everything that can be planned, let's plan it. And so that's when we, as entrepreneurs, need to really start putting a planning in place from the beginning. And that's what I call an organization roadmap. So basically, an organization roadmap is very much the same as what you would have for your product, and product roadmap, where you have all the different elements that needs to happen at various stage of growth of your organization. And so the first thing to do are about the culture. Then you start to build your HR capabilities, and then your performance framework. Once you do that, you gain much more peace, and you will be able to get more comfortable and an empowered team as well, and more performance in the organization. I'm looking at the time, and we're already at 23, so I'm going to skip or go very, very fast just so you can read it, but I'll start to take questions. So as I said, the first thing to do is really about the company culture. So first principles, then you start working on mission, vision, and then the values. In terms of HR, no need for HR until you reach 30-ish people. But once you have 30, it starts to be time to get a junior person, and you can add a mentor in order to cover the more high-level strategy thing. Hiring an in-house recruiter is totally makes sense from the moment you have at least, you have 30 hires. I mean, it's a no-brainer. From 30 hires, you totally, the cost effectiveness is really here. And you need to bring seniority in the team, like really high level of strategy in the organization, the HR organization, from 150. Performance management, happy to speak a bit more about that, but do not do anything early on. Okay, speaking to people is enough. Then you start to implement some monitoring tool just to allow people to check where they're at. And also from the second year, you need to get some appraisal. That's when people will need to see progress in their journey to have more clarity in terms of when is going to be their salary review, potential promotions, and whatsoever. Okay, takeaways are: you need to study the path ahead because an idea is not enough, and build your organization roadmap. Here we are. Okay, that was quite fast. I hope it was all good.
Thank you very much. And so we are glad at this moment to ask any, question or maybe follow-up question, or maybe more insight on one specific topic you want to touch in depth. So please, there is a chat there on your screen, I guess. So feel free to ask question, or obviously you can also put your on stage and ask straight away.
Yeah, we can have live questions, I'm sure.
Hi, I'll go ahead with the question. Is that okay if I ask here?
Yes, please.
Yeah, hi. So I think it's always like a catch-22 or a chicken and egg situation when you're in a startup where you want to hire like really good experienced people, but it's not that kind of experience you'll get. But you are at a stage where you can't get the best, and you're kind of trying to figure out what's the best way out here. So yeah. What would you kind of say around that?
So when I started 10 years ago, working with startups, I came from Google, had spent some time in the recruiting. And so for me, hire fast, fire fast was quite an heresy. It was really not the right thing. In a early startup stage, I think, however, it is probably a good move, because by hiring fast, firing fast, you actually get to learn much faster as well. So that's a good strategy from the moment you integrate the learning that comes from it. Okay, so for me, that's okay, because you don't know what you need. When you're an early stage startup, very often you don't quite know what you need and what type of profile, what type of skills you need. And even in terms of culture, you're still figuring out who you are as an organization and as a leader. So it's complicated. So this is what I would say. Interestingly, there's a difference between the type of leader, founders that I see. So those that are quite junior would tend to hire very junior, very flexible teams. that can, multi-hat and figure out how to do.
Yeah.
So that's usually the case. So that's working fine. That's absolutely fine. The challenge that they have is as they scale, because they struggle to hire people more, older than them and more experienced, which is really something that they have to get over with and be okay with having people more smarter and who know more, because that's what good managers do. They hire people better than them under them. So that's the challenge. For those that are more in the 40s, usually, okay, that's not all, but they hire people who are quite senior, and so that's good because they have all the strategy, etc. But they're struggling with getting operations done, and also it's harder for the teams to grow because all the roles at the top are already filled when they start to build the operation, and so it's a bit less. I would say attracting for the teams that get hired afterwards.
Thank you so much. I think listening it also makes it seem like what you've been thinking or facing is real and possible to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Recommendation to evaluate resourcefulness of a candidate, their ability to find required information. So I'm a big fan of behavioral questions. Behavioral questions are kind of the equivalent of case studies, but live. You actually ask the question, the candidate, you put them in a situation. Can you tell me about a time when you had to, so for instance, in your specific example, tell me about a time you had to complete a project, but you had neither the skills nor the budget to get the tools that you needed. How did you come up? What did you do? And then you have follow-up questions. Okay, what was the challenge? What was the situation? How did you decide to do? Why did you decide to go with that that solution? If you were to do it again, would you do it any different? What was the learning, etc., etc.? What was the impact? So behavioral questions are quite strong to be able to assess skills, soft skills, as much as technical skills. So it can be, can you tell me about a time when, or it can be hypothetical. Imagine that you are in this situation, what would you do? And then you deep dive. I hope I was answering your question, David. Any other question? What's the best way to do a yearly appraisal for a small team under 20 people? Every 6 months, reasonable for a development plan? Alors, appraisal. So for appraisal, what is an appraisal? The appraisal is the evaluation of the value of the employee, okay? The objective of the appraisal is to define the salary level and the job level. When you have 20 people, there's no job level. So you forget about that. It's just about the salary level. The salary level is defined by the value of the employee, the value that the employee brings to you in your organization, okay? If it's the same, I usually take the example, if you go to Starbucks, okay, and that you buy a coffee, there's a price up to which you won't go, okay? So that's pretty much the same. That's the value that you are ready, the cost that you're ready to pay for the value that your company is getting out of that. That's the value of the market as well. But let's say that if you want to buy a car just to drive from A to B, and you don't care about the how shiny and beautiful it is, you will just buy a very cheap car. You don't need to get a Ferrari, right? It depends on your needs. So it's quite the same. So the appraisal is very much about just defining the salary level. So once a year is the minimum. It's you reevaluate whether the quality, the value of the employee has increased over the year. And that's really the value, okay? If you go to Starbucks and all of a sudden the price has doubled, you will want to see an increase in quantity or quality, unless really it was very cheap before and you love it so much that you're ready to double the price. But yeah, it's really you assess the value of your employee and then you set a price to that. Make it, you don't need crazy systems, especially when you're small. When it's in terms of development plan, it's just, I would say 6 months is good, but it's mostly, I would say, make it just an open conversation. And keep in mind that when we speak about development, you cannot grow people against their will, okay? Development is an employee initiatives. What you can do as an organization or as a manager is to help them grow. So put systems in place to help them grow. So a system could be, that conversation every 6 months to help them figure out what they're good at, where they want to go, etc. So it's more of a coaching type of support. And at the organization level, some systems of peer-to-peer learning. You can trainings, try to avoid it. So often very expensive and not necessarily the best way to actually acquire skills.
Maybe I can, because on the sake of time, there is 2 questions, very interesting and somehow related together, which is, managing the present, thinking of the future, right? Because we have Mohamed and Adam, sharing about, the difficulty of being in the real present time and somehow planning, right? So any tip on that to share?
In terms of, sorry, I'm not quite sure I understand.
Okay, so basically we have 2 questions which is related to, the urgency. I mean, the managing of the today and still having some time. Some insight of what gonna do the next stage, right? Somehow.
Okay, very good question. So you don't. So what I do with early stage startups is that I meet with the CEO once a month for 2 hours, and really that's enough. Because what happens at early stage from 0 to 30, really, let's say 0 to 20, it's all about thinking and building that a high level strategy, which is the philosophy. What's my philosophy around performance management? What's my philosophy around compensation? What's my philosophy around people management? What's my management style? Etc. So it's more about making time aside to define all those things. Why did I stop at 20? Because usually you need to have some level of structure when you reach 30, because you start to have HR, etc. So you need to plan. But yeah, frankly, before that that level, it's all about thinking, articulating, and ensuring that you build your organization roadmap. So okay, by you have the manpower plan for it. So you start to think ahead for 12 months. In 12 months time, how many people are we going to be? And in order to be able to be ready to welcome these people, to hire them, what needs to be put in place. 12 months, I know that it's super challenging for startups to think 12 months ahead, but it's a needed exercise. We're not asking you to have it right and to be perfect in your, in your views, but what is important is to project yourself enough to give yourself time. Building an organization takes time, and hiring takes time. Hiring on average takes 3 months. From the moment the need is identified to the moment that the person comes on board, and you can add another 3 months on average for them to be actually up to speed and ramped up. So that's a lot of time. And building an organization is the same. It takes time, designing the right processes, implementing them, ensuring that everybody is like taking them and absorbing it. So there's only as much as an organization can handle at the same time.
Okay, thank you. And maybe a closing question from Lina. Thank you for asking again, Lina. And I guess that all of us in either a startup or corporate world, right? So we give responsibility to young managers based on the skills and the hard skills they have. And yet, there is some growth crisis coming in, and it asks for a different skill set. So how do you, any tip or any experience you can share with that before I excuse myself and wish you a very good day, guys?
Yeah, thank you, Jerome.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if you want, how do I phrase that? Because it's a big topic. So When we speak about performance management, the number one key to performance management is a good manager. The job of a manager is to manage the team. And so it's extremely important to make sure that we hire people in management roles that like people, like spending time with people, like have empathy, like doing coaching, mentoring, etc. So they will make up time in their calendar for people. And so those are not necessarily the ones that are the most technical during, in the team. So my advice is make sure that when you hire managers, you hire them for their management skills, not their technical skills. And that's something that you need to identify before you actually get them into a management role. I usually take the comparison with a bus driver, for instance. So imagine that there's a bus driver for a school bus, right? And you put your kids into that bus. Would you put your kids in the bus if that driver did not have yet their license? So that's the same for teams. Why would you put teams in the hands of a manager that has not proved to be a good people manager yet? How do you prove that? So if it's somebody that has never managed yet, you can have them, we were speaking about a people development plan earlier, somebody that wants to become a manager, get them to be manager on project managers. So they're not actually managing teams yet, but they're managing people in the context of a project. That way they can see whether that's something that they like, and they're good at, and that's how you can make a decision. That's one idea, right? But yeah, managers need to be good at managing and needs to make time for people. All right, I think we're already over time. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. I will remove my hat as Caron, people strategy expert, and put on my my hat as a French Tech co-president. So we're having those every other week. We have twice a month Lunch and Learn sessions on a number of different topics. So if there are some specific topics that you would like us to be sharing about, please let us know. This was an introduction to people strategy. It's a really broad topic. There's a company culture, there's a HR, there's performance management, development, compensation, and all this. If there is one topic more specifically that you would like me to come back to speak about, let me know. Let the French Tech knows, and they will ask the speaker if she's happy to come back. Yes, I will. Thank you. All right, Juliette, I think you're the host, so I'll let you.
Yeah, I'm gonna close that station and stop the recording. So thank you, everybody, and see you for the next one.
Yes.
Thank
you.
Anna.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.